a big part of the reason why a lot of guys do not want their friends dating their sisters is because on one end, it's just not something that we'd be very comfortable with. Because, of course, when you guys are a bunch of close friends, you will talk about some of the intimate occurrences that will happen. I would not want to hear about how my friend was busy clapping my sister's cheeks. That just does not seem like something that I'd be particularly comfortable with. So why would I want that to happen? Also,
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who believes that astrology should have been the study of us. He is also a man who likes his women just the same way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I have come through to talk about the ladies, or at least to talk to the ladies, or both. Because with what it is that I intend on talking about, it's either I'm just going to involve the ladies partially, I'm going to involve the ladies fully, and this is kind of like the antithesis of a lot of the episodes that I've been doing lately, where it's like I've been talking to the guys, for the guys, to the guys, about the guys. So I feel like in this particular episode, how about I switch things up and start talking about the ladies? And considering that this is a Friday episode, it does mean that I do get to dive into the wonderful world of X. And it also means that if you do want to suggest something that we can talk about in the name of a tweet, then you can also send it to us, be it something that you've seen on Facebook, IG, or on X. And I will explain how Facebook and IG get involved, because it's a pretty simple drill, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. On Facebook and on IG, if it happens to be a screenshot or a screen grab, or it ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @TheBreakTime_podcast on IG or @TheBreakTime_podcast on Facebook. The DMs are always open, and I would be more than happy to take it from there and handle it accordingly. Now, like I said, I have a couple of tweets that involve the women, and I intend on getting to those tweets, but before I can get into any of that, I first want to talk about something that affects the men. But, it does kind of affect the women also, because it was an older man that was trying to talk like a woman, and I just found that to be particularly odd. But instead of me giving my full breakdown of everything, then my explanation, I'm gonna play the clip, then I can give my thoughts on the entire thing. So, without further ado,
I don't think a woman should ever marry a man that does not have a mind to 100% provide for her. If you sit down and you have a conversation with a man as a woman, and he's sitting there, he's bringing up 50-50, I want you to come up with 50, I'm going to come up with it. He's not a masculine man in my opinion. If I were a woman, I would dismiss any man that came up with a conversation about 50-50. Because he's lacking somewhere in terms of his masculinity.
Or maybe, just maybe, it's not that he's lacking, but he may actually look at the kind of life and lifestyle that she's living or wants to live, and knows that he can't entirely be throwing all of his money there, and he wants her to sort of fund some of the stuff that she really wants to do herself. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, although I'm not gonna lie, I find a lot of these conversations just very tiring. Or maybe it's just me that's gotten quite jaded with the whole topic of money in relationships, but I feel like people talk about it so much, or at least a lot of people who've talked about it so much have just exhaustively just beat on guys for not being able to provide, that it just gets to a point you just almost always expect to hear the same thing, or roughly about the same thing, by some other person that's thinking that they're saying something profound on the internet. And this case isn't particularly different. Dude is saying more or less the same exact shit that women would want to hear on the internet about, a man should provide, blah, blah, blah. But frankly, if anyone pays attention to reality, for a fact that whatever dude is saying, while it's not 100% wrong, it just sounds mostly very out of touch. Granted, the guy does look like he's in his 40s or 50s, and maybe it's just me that's looking at him and he's busy thinking things wrong, but I don't know. You look at someone who's in their 20s or 30s, okay, it's not like talking about going full 50-50 all the time is a particularly healthy thing to discuss either, but I can get where it comes from. There's a lot of people nowadays who just look at the whole idea of you paying for shit completely as a guy as something that is sometimes financially exploitative of men, or just financially exploitative in general, and it's something that they're not entirely into. And I can totally get that. If you've been financially abused in the past as a guy, I can get why you would want a babe to sort out her bill and you sort out yours when you're going on a date. When you guys are talking about bills, you're like, you know what, you sort out your shit, let me sort out mine. At least up to a point. I can totally get that. It doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50, but when you've been financially abused, or if you've gone through people that have, just put you through the financial paces, I can get why you would feel that way. But now, this thought process that, as a man you have to provide regardless of blah blah and blah, like, I can get the provision side of it, and I can get as a society that's what we've been conditioned to believe and all, but I don't think it always has to be 100%. Otherwise, like, you have women in the workforce that are making particularly good money, and these guys are just working themselves to the bone, handling most of these bills, and some of these women will not contribute anything, and as a result will build themselves a bunch of wealth, or will waste that money on stuff that probably provides zero additional value to, you or the family. And then at the end of it, you're the one that's going to be looked at as broke, yet if you guys combined your incomes, you could have been a lot better ahead. Like, why not talk about 50-50 or the idea of combining bills or combining costs so that you guys can have much better financial plans that can actually lead to a much better financial future? Like, I feel like sometimes the whole discussion about money isn't even just a discussion about money. It's like, what level of maturity as a person are you at so that you can decide, it's a lot better if we combine our incomes rather than you spend all of your money and I keep all of mine, and then we see where we can move from there. Like, in terms of emotional and also just personal maturity, I feel like that's where we're at as people. Like, if people are busy talking about, a man should be handling all 100% of the bills all the time, I think by the time you're listening to someone say that, they probably don't know shit and they're still either living in a bubble or they're just selfish. And maybe they shouldn't be dating as a result. But that's just my opinion. I personally think that having the whole discussion of splitting bills isn't a bad thing, but I think it should be done well within reason. And yes, as a man, it is your role to provide. But let's be very honest. The current economic times for a lot of us people don't exactly work out to give the kind of ideal future you would want to give your partner and whatever possible family you'd have without you at least splitting some bills with your partner. And, some people might catch a feeling for that, but you know what? They can suck a dick for all I care. Either way, I've got these tweets that I need to get into, and it's not like they're very few or very short, so let me move it on to our very first tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a woman, and it ended up on IG, and it says, and I quote, "There is not a single man who believes the quote, not all men. Because if you really believed it, you would let your homies date your sisters. You don't, because you know. You would let your daughters go to sleepovers in other men's houses if those men's wives were not around. You don't, because you know. You would have at least 3 men on call that you could have babysit your daughters the way women have at least 3 women on call that they can leave their children of either sex with. You don't, because you know. You would not give your daughters such tight curfews while giving your boys relatively unlimited freedom. You do, because you know. You wouldn't care what your female relatives were outside. You do, because you know." End quote. Okay, I don't know if it's just me that sees this or that's hearing this at least, but I feel like her saying shit like this is the very definition of us guys saying not all men. Like, it's almost like she validated exactly what she's trying to speak against, because when you think about it, like, I can be okay with my sister, not that I have one, dating some other guy, but not my homies. So in essence, I'm saying that some men can date her, but not all men, which kind of just beats the purpose. Like, how the fuck is it that she said this and she didn't see the error of what she wrote? I don't know. Maybe it's just me that's looking at it a little bit differently. Because, if it was a case of all men and not a case of not all men, then I'd rather my sister became a lesbian and just dated women. But, probably people don't like to see stuff like that. And anyways, I don't want to get into the whole daughter bit because I'm not a parent, so I can't entirely speak on the whole parent-child relationship. But for a lot of these things, I think it's because we understand that it's not all men that are good. So there are some men, there's a lot of men that may have nefarious intentions, that may have, particularly bad habits or bad traits and may be inappropriate. Some people are just bad actors in general. And the thing is, she's centering it on men. I believe that this also extends to women as well. Because it's not like I would let my child go and sleep over at a woman's place whether or not the husband is there. Just because going to a grown adult's place and sleeping over there just doesn't make sense, not unless if, say, you also have other kids that your kid is going to be with. But, maybe that's just a me thing. Like, having at least 3 people on call isn't particularly specific to gender. Like, I know there's a homie of mine who has a kid who can call me in the event that he needs something for the kid or he needs the kid taken care of because he knows that I'm a particularly good person with that kid. And this is regardless of the gender of the kid. So most of this is a bunch of hogwash. But like I said, I'll center it to the stuff that is more sibling or like relative level because I don't have any kids. Now, a big part of the reason why a lot of guys do not want their friends dating their sisters is because on one end, it's just not something that we'd be very comfortable with. Because, of course, when you guys are a bunch of close friends, you will talk about some of the intimate occurrences that will happen. I would not want to hear about how my friend was busy clapping my sister's cheeks. That just does not seem like something that I'd be particularly comfortable with. So why would I want that to happen? Also, I'd hate to get into a conflict of interest where the both of them are fighting. It becomes a particularly big thing and it suddenly starts to turn into a case of you choosing sides or you deciding who's on the wrong and who's on the right, because you would want to defend your family members against someone who isn't your family, but at the same time, it's not like your friends probably might be on the wrong or might be on the right. Then also, much as I may hate to admit it, some of our friends are just pieces of shit. Some of our friends are assholes. Some of our friends aren't people that we would want to go and be with women that are close to us. But they just seem to get women that seem to like them for who they are. So just because they seem to bag a couple of babes doesn't mean that we'd be comfortable letting them bag ours that are from our bloodline. Which also leads on to the whole bit about letting our relatives or female friends like dress a certain way whenever they're going out, or them staying out particularly late. And like I said, like the whole not all men thing is purely justified there. Like, we understand that not all men are going to be the most appropriate or the most respectful, or will see you in the puristic or very nice way that we might probably see you. Some of them might look at you as just fresh meat. Some of them might look at you as potential ass, and they may be willing to do whatever it takes to be with you. And we do not want that to happen. So we would much rather have you in a much better position, in a much better place, where you may not look as slutty, so that it is better for all of us, as opposed to just you who may want to look a certain way for a certain set of people. But then again, I might be wrong about this one, and I would love your feedback on it, but I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode, which is actually a reply to a tweet where the original tweet had said, and I quote, "I hate adults who avoid grown and difficult conversations. Like, sweetie, we are not sweeping shit under the carpet over here. The elephant must be addressed." End quote. To which the reply was, and I quote, "Thing about this is, avoiding those situations and difficult conversations doesn't make the elephant disappear. In fact, it ends up being a mammoth-sized situation at the end of it all." End quote. Now, I'll be very honest, this even extends beyond romantic relationships. This is just relationships all around, whether it's work relationships, whether it's platonic relationships, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's relationships with your family and your siblings and shit. Avoiding having difficult conversations is the kind of shit that always ends up becoming way worse down the line, as opposed to addressing it and nipping it in the bud. And it is something that is very unfortunate that a lot of people tend to avoid having nowadays, because it's like the discomfort of not being the yes man, the discomfort of just flat out saying something that might be taken as negative is something that so many people want to avoid in today's day and age. Yet in a lot of cases and a lot of times, it can actually have very positive results. the art of saying no, the art of having difficult conversations and being rational about it is something that is very, very slowly becoming a lost art, if I can call it an art, or just a lost practice in the world today. A lot of people don't want to have logical conversations. Everyone's all up in their feelings and shit, and it's just sad sometimes. Like, I feel like if you are a mature human being and you feel like you are self-aware, then having difficult conversations shouldn't be bad. Like, they can be hard to have, but they're not inherently bad. And it shouldn't be something that you should sweep under the rug. The faster you can sort it out, the faster you can move on from it. If it's something that will require you to make some changes in your life, then you can do that. If it's something that doesn't require changes in your life, you can do that as well. But this whole thing of trying to avoid shit, I don't know. I've never really seen it have positive results. But then again, that's just me and I might be wrong. So moving it on to our very next tweet of this episode, which was posted up by a woman who said, and I quote, "So men actually prefer women without makeup?" End quote. You're figuring this out now? Like, the interesting part about it is, like, you think about it way back in the day. Like, I used to be a very vocal person, and this was even pre-podcast. I was always talking about, women look better without makeup than with, because when you take the makeup off, it's obviously going to bring some issues here and there. And of course, a lot of guys that would say this, because it wasn't just me that would say stuff like this, were always being looked at as haters. Then guys started talking about the whole idea of your first date should be you guys going to a swimming pool or something of the sort, so that the makeup comes off and you can see her for what she really looks like. And then women came up and they were like, you know what? We have waterproof makeup. So this entire time, like, there's women that are now starting to come to the realization that, like, guys prefer women without makeup than with. I don't know. It's actually pretty interesting. And while I can get that, yes, maybe I am generalizing this shit, and maybe I could be wrong and there could be guys that actually like women with makeup, I will be very honest and tell you that out of all the guys that I have interacted with throughout my life, because this is something that is particularly rare in my case, with all the guys that I've interacted with both online and offline, and with all of the comments that I'll read, all the posts that I'll read, I think I've only ever seen one instance where someone was like, I love a woman with makeup, and for them they were like, I love a woman with makeup so much, so I'll even go and I'll buy more makeup for her, and like I'll get to know what it is that she likes because I love my woman with makeup. And that's like one out of all of the hundreds of people that I will see commenting online, and the hundreds and possibly even thousands of people that I'll meet and interact with offline. So is there a particularly small number of men that may love a woman with makeup? Yes, but the vast majority of guys, they'd probably prefer it if you are natural. It makes the job a hell of a lot easier. You can hug him a lot better. You don't have to worry about staining his shirt. You won't go to bed looking like Rihanna and wake up looking like Shaka Zulu. Like, it's a hell of a lot better for most of us guys. But then again, I could be wrong about this, just the same I could be wrong about many other things. So I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our very final tweet of this episode, which was also posted up by a woman who said, and I quote, "There's no single woman above 30 who is happy being single. No matter how you pretend to be, deep down you want a man." End quote. I don't know. I'd probably question this because, there's lesbian women, of course, and they probably want women. So I can't entirely say that this is particularly accurate. Also, even with that being said, like, I don't think that it's easy to put this generalization and for me to admit that it's true or false. One, because I don't interact with that many women above the age of 30. And two, by that age, there's a lot of people that are very into themselves and very independent in their thinking. So it's hard to say that most will want that. It's a good idea to have, and there's a lot of women that do want it but aren't in the position to get guys or aren't getting guys. And it is particularly sad. What I can say for a fact is that there's a lot of women that were probably lied to growing up, and they were told, go chase the bag, go and become as successful as possible, or, go and grow yourself career-wise. And then now that they're into their 30s and they're like, now I want to settle down, I want a made man, they're realizing there's a lot of men that aren't that made. There's a lot of men that aren't ready to settle down within that age that are single. And a lot of the serious great potential guys are probably already taken, which now makes it harder for them because they have a much smaller pool of guys to be with or to deal with. And even those guys may want some women that are younger, or they're just very few and far between, so you can't really get to them that easily. So in reality, I do think that this could be possible, but for the most part, I do argue that it is questionable. There's some women that are actually tired of the dating market. Like, I know, especially as of right now, with the kind of crop of people that are in the dating market, a lot of them being particularly very good at infidelity, I can get why women above the age of 30 can be like, you know what, fuck dating. Like, they've probably gone through a bunch of shit in their 20s and they're like, you know what, fuck dating for now, let me just focus on my bag. And it's perfectly warranted. Is it great to get a partner by the age of 30 and have some sort of settling down? Yeah, it is. But does that mean that that's what everyone wants? I wouldn't entirely say so. You know, the whole white picket fence and have a family and some kids thing is a great image to have, but it's not like everyone has that image, and it's not like every single person that even has that image is going to attain it. Although, then again, I could be wrong about this, just to say I could be wrong about a bunch of other things. So I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at BagakTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is at The Breaktime Podcast and The Breaktime_podcast, respectively. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.